You are listening to audio stories at Story Nova and Tale Vibe. Chapter 15. The Ring Goes. South after that day, the hobbits held a private meeting in Bilbo's room. Merry and Pippin were furious when they learned that Sam had crept into the council chamber and had been chosen as Frodo's companion.
"That's the most unfair thing ever," said Pippin. "Instead of throwing him out and chaining him up, Elrond rewards his impudence."
"Reward, you say?" said Frodo. "I can't imagine a punishment more severe. Think about what you're saying. Being sentenced to go on a hopeless journey, is that a reward? Yesterday, I dreamed that my task was done and I could rest here for a long time, perhaps forever." "I'm not surprised," said Merry, "and I wish you could. But it's Sam we're jealous of, not you. If you must go, then it will be a punishment for any of us to be left behind, even in Rivendell. We've come a long way with you and faced hard times together. We want to go on." "That's just what I mean," said Pippin. "We hobbits ought to stick together, and we will."
"I'm going unless they chain me."
"There must be someone smart in the company." "Then you certainly won't be chosen, Peregrine Took," said Gandalf, looking through the window near the floor. "But all your worrying is unnecessary."
"Nothing has been decided yet." "Nothing decided?"
cried Pippin. "Then what have you all been doing? You've been in secret meetings for hours." "Just talking," said Bilbo. "There's plenty to talk about, and everyone's coming to their senses."
"Even old Gandalf, I think. Legolas's news about Gollum gave him quite a shock, though he pretended otherwise." "You're wrong," said Gandalf. "You haven't been listening."
"I already heard that news from Gwaihir. If you want to know, the only ones truly brought to their senses, as you said,
are you and Frodo, and I'm the only one not surprised." "Well."
"Whatever," said Bilbo. "Nothing's been settled yet, except that poor Frodo and Sam are chosen."
"I always feared it would come to this if I were let off the hook."
"But if you ask me, Elrond will send a company of capable people when the announcements are made." "Have they started yet, Gandalf?" "Yes," said the wizard. "Some scouts have already been sent out. More will leave tomorrow. Elrond is sending some elves, and they'll keep in touch with the rangers and perhaps with Thranduil's folk in Mirkwood. And Aragorn has gone with Elrond's sons. We'll search all the lands for many miles along the road before any departure is made."
"So cheer up, Frodo."
"You may stay here for quite a while." "Ah," said Sam gloomily. "We'll only be waiting till winter then." "That can't be helped," said Bilbo. "It's partly your fault, my boy. You insisted on waiting till my birthday."
"I can't help finding that bit of honour amusing."
"I shouldn't have chosen that date for the Espies to move into Bag End, but now it's done. You can't wait till spring, and you can't go until the reports come back. When cold winds in winter blow, and frost and snow lie deep below, leaves are fallen, bare the tree. While in the wild the dark things flee. But luck may serve you only so, I'm afraid that's true," said Gandalf. "We can't start until we know more about the riders." "I thought they were all drowned in the flood," said Merry. "The ring-wraiths can't be destroyed that way," said Gandalf. "Their master's power is in them, and whether they stand or fall depends on him. We hope they've lost their horses and their shapes, and that this will lessen the danger for a while, but we must be sure. In the meantime, you should try to forget your worries, Frodo. I don't know what else I can do to help you, but I'll whisper this in your ear. Someone said wisdom is needed in a company." He was right. "I think I shall go with you." Frodo was so overjoyed at this that Gandalf had to step away from the window, lift his hat, and bow. "I only said I think I shall go. Don't set your hopes too high. Elrond will have much to say on the matter, and your Strider friend too."
"That reminds me, I must see Elrond now. I must be off. How long do you think we'll stay here?"
Frodo asked Bilbo after Gandalf had gone.
"Oh, I don't know."
"You can't count days in Rivendell," said Bilbo, "but I think it will be quite a while. We'll have time to talk more, and maybe you can help me finish my book and start the next one."
"Have you thought of an ending?"
"Yes, many times, and all of them dark and uneasy," said Frodo. "Oh, not at all," said Bilbo. "Books ought to have good endings. What about this? And then they all settled down and lived happily ever after."
"That would be fine, if only it could be so," said Frodo. "Ah,
said Sam. "And where would they live?" "That's what I always wonder." The hobbits talked for a while longer about their journey and the dangers ahead, but the pleasant things of Rivendell soon drove away their fears and cares. The future, good or ill, was not forgotten but no longer ruled their present. Their health and hope grew, and they welcomed each day as it came, talking cheerfully at every meal, with every word and song. So the days passed, each morning bright and fresh, each evening fair and clear. But autumn faded quickly. The golden light waned to silver, and the lingering leaves at last fell from the bare trees. A cold wind began to blow down from the misty mountains to the east.
A full moon shone bright in the sky, dimming the lesser stars, but a red star low in the south burned more vividly each night.
When the moon had set, Frodo could see it from his window, glowing among the brightening heavens like an eye, watching above the treetops on the valley's rim. The hobbits had now stayed in Elrond's house for nearly 2 months. November passed in the waning of autumn, and in December the scouts began to return. Some had gone north beyond the springs of Horwell into the Eton moors. Others had gone west, searching far below the Grey Flood with Aragorn and the Rangers as far as Tharbad, where the old North Road crossed the river by a ruined town. Many had gone east and south. Others had crossed the mountains into Mirkwood, and some had climbed the pass at the source of the Gladden River, venturing into Wilderland through the fields of the Gladden, and at last to Radagast's old home at Rosgobel. But Radagast was not there, and they returned by way of the high passes called the Dimrill Stair. Elrond's sons, Elladan and Elrohir, were the last to return. They had gone far down the Silverlode into a strange country, but they told their purpose only to Elrond. The messengers found no sign or news of the riders or any other servants of the enemy in any land.
Even the great eagles of the misty mountains brought back no tidings.
They heard and saw nothing of Gollum, but the wolves were gathering again, hunting far up the great river. 3 black horses were found drowned at the fords. On the steep banks below, searchers found the bodies of 5 more, along with a long black cloak, torn and tattered. There was no trace of the black riders, nor any place that gave a sense of their presence. It seemed they had vanished into the north. "At least 8 of the 9 are accounted for," said Gandalf. "It cannot be said with haste or certainty, but I think we may hope that the ring-wraiths have been scattered and forced to return to their master in Mordor, empty and shapeless. If that is so, then we have a little time before they begin the hunt again. Of course, the enemy has other servants, but they must roam all the borders of Rivendell before they can find our trail, and if we are careful, they will have a hard time doing so. Yet we must delay no longer." Elrond summoned the hobbits. He looked intently at Frodo. "The time has come," he said. "If the ring is to go, then it must go soon. But those who go with it must not expect aid from war or armies. They must pass into the lands of the enemy, far from all help. Do you still hold to your word, Frodo, that you will be the ring-bearer?"
"I do," said Frodo, "and I will go with Sam." "Then I can give you little help, not even counsel," said Elrond.
"I can see little upon your road, nor do I know how your task may be achieved. The shadow has crept to the feet of the mountains, and it has crept down to the borders of the Grey Flood.
And under that shadow I can see nothing but darkness."
You will meet many foes, some open, some hidden, and you may find friends upon your way when you least look for them. I will send such messages as I can contrive to those whom I know in the wide world. But if those messages fail, then the lands ahead will be perilous indeed, or the messages themselves will not travel faster than you. Therefore, I shall choose those who shall go with you, as chance or fortune allows. Few shall go, for you hope to move swiftly and in secret. I have a host of elves in armor of ancient days, who shall have need when the power of Mordor rises. The company of the ring shall be 9.
And the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil.
Gandalf shall go, for this shall be his great task, and maybe the end of his labours. For the others, they shall represent the free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall go for the elves, and Gimli, son of Glóin, for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least as far as the mountains, and perhaps beyond. For men you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. "Strider," said Frodo. "Yes," he said, smiling. "Once more I shall be your companion, Frodo." "I had hoped you would go with me," said Frodo, "but I thought you would go to Minas Tirith with Boromir." "So I shall," said Aragorn, "and the sword that was broken shall be reforged before I set out to war. But our roads lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore Boromir shall be one also of the company. He is a valiant man." "Then 2 more must be found," said Elrond. "I shall consider this matter. I may choose some of my own household to send with you." "But that would leave no room for us," cried Pippin in dismay. "We don't want to be left behind."
"We want to go with Frodo."
"That is because you do not understand nor imagine what lies ahead," said Elrond. "Nor does Frodo," said Gandalf, coming unexpectedly to Pippin's aid. "None of us can see clearly. Indeed, if these hobbits understood the peril, they would not dare to go. But they will go on wishing to, or wishing they dared, and they will be ashamed and unhappy if they are left behind. Elrond, I think in this matter it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom. Even if you chose us a lord of the elves, such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by his own power." "You speak persuasively," said Elrond, "but I am still in doubt. I have a foreboding that even the Shire is not free from peril at this hour, and I had thought to send these 2 back as messengers, to do what they could according to the ways of their countryfolk, and to warn all of the danger. In any case, I judge that the younger of the 2, Peregrine Took, should remain. My heart is against his going." "Then, Master Elrond," said Pippin, "you must lock me in prison, or tie me in a sack and send me home yourself, for otherwise I shall follow the company." "Then so be it. You shall go," said Elrond, sighing. "Now the tale of the 9 is filled. In 7 days the company must depart." The sword of Elendil was reforged in the elven forges, its blade adorned with devices of 7 stars between the crescent moon and the rayed sun, and wrought in ancient runes, for Aragorn, son of Arathorn, was to go to war in Mordor. The sword shone red in the sunlight, cold and bright in the moonlight, and its edge was hard and keen. Then Aragorn gave it a new name, Andúril, Flame of the West. Aragorn and Gandalf walked and talked together of the journey and the perils ahead. They pored over maps and books of lore and images of old in Elrond's house. Sometimes Frodo joined them, though he was content to rely on their guidance.
And spent much time with Bilbo in those last days.
One afternoon the hobbits sat together in the Hall of Fire and heard all the tales of Beren and Luthien, and of the great jewel's fall. But one day, while Merry and Pippin were wandering somewhere about, Frodo and Sam sat with Bilbo in his little room. Then Bilbo read passages from his book, seemingly unfinished, or chanted verses of his poems, or jotted notes upon Frodo's adventures. One morning, in the last days, Frodo sat alone with Bilbo, and the old hobbit drew a wooden box from under his bed. He opened the lid and rummaged inside.
"Here's your sword," he said.
"But it's broken, as you know. I kept it carefully, but I forgot to ask if the smiths could mend it.
Now there's no time.
So I think you better take it as it is, you see?" He drew forth a small sword in a weathered leather scabbard. Then he drew it out, and its well-tended blade gleamed cold and bright. "This is Sting," he said, slipping it gently back into its sheath.
Take it if you like. I shan't need it again, I fancy." Frodo accepted it with reverence. "And there's this,"
said Bilbo, pulling out a roll that seemed heavy for its size. He unwrapped many layers of old cloth and revealed a small coat of mail. It was close woven of many rings, as supple as linen, cold as ice, and harder than steel. It shone like moonlight and was studded with white gems. The belt was set with pearls and crystals. "Pretty, isn't it?" said Bilbo, holding it to the light.
And useful too.
"It's a dwarf mail of mithril that Thorin gave me. I brought it back from Michel delving before I started, and packed it among my things. I brought all my treasures with me, except the ring. But I never meant to wear it again, and now I don't need it, save perhaps to look at it now and then. It won't weigh you down." "I shall look." "Well, I don't suppose I shall look right in it," said Frodo. "Exactly what I said to myself," said Bilbo. "But never mind appearances. You can wear it under your outer clothes.
Now you must keep it secret.
Don't tell anyone else, but I shall feel happier knowing you have it. I fancy it could even turn aside the blades of the Black Riders," he added softly. "Very well, I'll take it," said Frodo. Bilbo helped him put it on and fastened Sting upon the glittering belt. Then Frodo covered it all with his old, weather-stained breeches, his coat, and cloak. "You look just like an ordinary hobbit," said Bilbo. "But there's more about you than meets the eye now. Good luck to you." He turned away and looked out the window, humming.
I don't know what to say to thank you for all this, Bilbo, and for all the past, said Frodo. Don't try,
said the old hobbit, turning and patting his back.
Oh, he cried. You're tough now. But listen, hobbits must stick together, especially Bagginses.
All I ask in return is that you take care of yourself as best you can and bring back all the news you can, with songs and tales you may gather. I'll do my best to finish my book when you return. I'll write the sequel if I have time. He paused and turned again to the window, softly singing, I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen,
of meadow flowers and butterflies in summers that have been,
of yellow leaves and gossamer in autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago and people who will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. It was a cold grey day near the end of December. The wind of winter blew over the bare trees and whistled among the firs on the hills. The clouds were low and dark, hurrying eastward. The company was ready, and as the sad dusk fell early, they set out. They departed at evening, for Elrond had advised them to go under cover of night as far as they could from Rivendell. Be careful of the eyes of the enemy's servants, he said. I do not doubt that tidings of the Black Riders' defeat has reached him, and he is wrathful. His spies are abroad, on land and in the air. Even the sky above you must be watched. The company took little by way of arms or war gear, for they hoped to avoid battle by secrecy. Aragorn carried no weapons save Andúril, and he wore a coat of green and brown, as a ranger of the wild. Boromir bore a long sword, similar in fashion to Andúril, but not so ancient, and beside it he carried a shield and a great war horn. It will sound loud in the valleys of the hills, he said, and all enemies of Gondor will flee. He set it to his lips and blew a great blast, and echoes leapt from rock to rock, and all who heard it in Rivendell were astonished. You should beware of blowing that horn again, Boromir, said Elrond, until you stand once more on your own land, where all will rejoice to hear it. Maybe, said Boromir, but always I have let my horn cry at my setting forth, and though thereafter we may walk in darkness.
I will not go as a thief in the night. The dwarf Gimli alone openly wore a short coat of linked rings, for dwarves made such things light to wear.
And he carried a broad axe. Legolas had a bow and a quiver, and at his belt a long white knife. The hobbits bore short swords from the barrow, but Frodo carried only Sting and, as Bilbo wished, his mithril coat was hidden. Gandalf bore his staff and wore at his side the elven blade Glamdring, mate to Orcrist that lay buried with Thorin under the lonely mountain. All were clad in warm, thick garments made in Elrond's house with fur-lined cloaks. Food, clothing, bedding, and other necessities were packed on a sturdy pony, none other than the poor beast they had brought from Bree. Life in Rivendell had transformed it. It was sleek and full of vigour. Sam insisted on taking it, saying that Bill, as he called him, would pine if left behind. That animal can almost talk, he said, and it would if it stayed here any longer. It looked at me as plain as could be, like Mr. Pippin might say in words, "If you don't let me go with you, Sam, I'll follow all the same." So Bill the pony was chosen to bear the company's burdens, and the only member who did not seem anxious at their departure. Their farewell had been held in the great hall by the fire, and now they were only waiting for the gaffer, who had not yet come out of the house. A flash of flame leapt up from the wide-open doors, and soft light streamed out as from many windows. Bilbo, muffled in his cloak, stood silent beside Frodo on the threshold.
Aragorn sat with his head bowed upon his knees.
Only Elrond fully understood what this moment meant to him. The others loomed faintly like grey shadows in the dark. Sam stood beside the little horse, clenching his teeth and gloomily gazing into the dim shadows below, where the river roared. His desire to join the journey was sinking to its lowest point.
"Bill, my lad," he said, "you shouldn't go with us."
"You ought to stay here and munch hay until the grass grows again." Bill wagged his tail and said nothing. "And so is the Redhorn Gate," said Gandalf, "and I cannot imagine how we could pass that way unseen. But we will think on what must be done. As for starting early while it's still dark, I fear you are right. Luckily, our fire gives very little smoke, and we had already banked it low before the Crebain came," said Aragorn. "It must be put out and never rekindled." "Yes, if that isn't both a nuisance and a misfortune," said Pippin. The news that there would be no fire and that they must go on again by night had cast him down as soon as he woke in the late afternoon.
"All because of a pack of crows."
"I was looking forward to a proper meal tonight. Something hot and stewed." "Yes, and you may go on looking forward," said Gandalf. "There are many unlooked-for feasts ahead of you. For myself, I should like a pleasant pipe of smoke and warmer feet. However, one thing we may be sure of, as we go south—"
"It will grow warmer." "I don't know about that," muttered Sam to Frodo. "But I'm beginning to think this is the time we'll see the sign of the fiery mountain and find the end of the road, as they say."
At first, I thought this Redhorn, or whatever its name is, might be it, until Gimli spoke.
"A jawbreaker of a name in dwarvish tongue."
"Maps mean nothing to me, and these endless strange lands are making my head spin." All day the company lay hidden. From time to time, dark birds passed high overhead, but when the western sun turned red, they vanished southward. At dusk, the company set out, turning eastward toward Caradhras, which loomed distant and deep in the pale, fading light of the setting sun. White stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Guided by Aragorn, they followed a fairly easy path. Frodo found pleasure in the remnants of an ancient road, once broad and well-tended, running from Hollin toward the pass. The moon, now full, was rising behind the mountains, casting a dim radiance that made the cliffs appear black. Many stones looked as though they had been shaped by hands, though now they lay broken among the barren, cheerless hills. Hours of cold wind passed before the first gleam of dawn showed, and the moon sank low. Frodo glanced upward. Suddenly he saw, or felt rather than saw, a dark shape flit across the high stars, blotting them out and then letting them shine again. He shivered. "Did you see anything pass overhead?" he whispered to Gandalf, who was walking in front. "No, but I felt it, whatever it was," the wizard replied. "Perhaps it was nothing." only a wisp of cloud. It moved too fast, murmured Aragorn, and there is no wind. Nothing else happened that night. The next morning's dawn was brighter than before, but the air had turned cold again, and the wind had shifted to the east. They went on for 2 more nights, climbing higher yet slower than ever, as the way led steeply upward, and the mountains drew nearer. By the 3rd morning, Caradhras towered before them, a vast mountain with silvered snowy crown and flanks of bare rock, stained red as if with blood. The sky darkened, and the sun grew dim. The wind blew now from the northeast. Gandalf sniffed the air and looked back. "Winter is behind us, close upon our heels," he said quietly to Aragorn. "The northern peaks are whiter than ever. Snow is falling on their sides. Tonight we shall reach the path to the Redhorn Gate. We may be watched upon the narrow way, ambushed by enemies, yet the weather may prove the deadliest foe of all. What think you of the way now, Aragorn?" Frodo overheard these words and realized that Gandalf and Aragorn were continuing a long-standing debate. He listened anxiously. "I do not know much of the road from beginning to end, as you know, Gandalf," said Aragorn. "All perils, seen and unseen, will come as we go. Yet we must go on. Delay in the mountains is ill. There is no pass further south till Rohan, and since your tidings of Saruman, I mistrust that way. Who can tell which side the Horse Lords stand on now?" "Indeed, who can tell?" said Gandalf. "But beyond Caradhras there lies only one other path, the dark and secret way we have spoken of. Let us not speak of it again."
"I beg you, not before the others, unless there is no other choice. We must decide before we go further," said Gandalf.
"Then let each of us ponder it while the others rest," Aragorn replied. Late that afternoon, while the others finished their meal, Gandalf and Aragorn stood watching Caradhras. Its slopes were dark and mournful, its peak lost in a grey cloud. Frodo watched them, wondering what decision they had reached. When they returned to the company, Gandalf spoke, and Frodo knew they had resolved to face the weather and the mountain road. He felt relief. Whatever the dark and secret way might be, it clearly disheartened Aragorn, and Frodo was glad it had been set aside. "From the signs we have seen," Gandalf said,
"I fear the Redhorn Gate is watched, and I doubt the weather too. Snow is coming.
"We must move swiftly. Even so, we shall need more than 2 days to reach the summit. It will be dark early tonight. We must leave as soon as you are ready." "If I may offer counsel," said Boromir, "I was born in the shadow of the White Mountains and know something of travelling in high places. We shall face deadly cold, if not worse, before we descend the far side. It will not help to keep our journey secret if we freeze to death. When we leave these low woods, each should carry a bundle of firewood as large as he can bear." "And Bill can carry a fair bit too, can't you, lad?" said Sam. The pony looked at him sorrowfully. "Very well," said Gandalf, "but we must not use the wood, unless it is fire or death." The company set out again, at first making good speed, but soon the path grew steep and treacherous.
Often it vanished under fallen rocks.
Darkness deepened beneath the clouds. A cold wind rose, howling down the cliffs. By midnight they had climbed to the mountain's mid-slopes. The narrow path ran now beneath a sheer wall of rock on the left, above sharp ridges of Caradhras lost in the gloom. To the right yawned a black gulf where the ground fell away into a deep ravine. They toiled upward, halting at last on a knife-edge ridge. Frodo felt something soft brush his cheek. He reached out and caught a white snowflake melting on his sleeve. They went on, but soon the snow fell thick and fast, filling the air, stinging Frodo's eyes. Darkness closed in so that even Gandalf and Aragorn, a few steps ahead, were only shadowy shapes.
"I don't like this at all," gasped Sam behind him.
"Snow's all right on a nice morning, but I'd rather be in bed when it's falling."
"I wish it had gone to Hobbiton. They'd enjoy it there."
Heavy snow was rare in the Shire except on the North Moors, and was always taken as a blessing, a time for play. No living hobbit, except Bilbo, remembered the fell winter of 1311 when white wolves came over the frozen Brandywine. Gandalf stopped. Snow lay thick on his hat and shoulders and was nearly ankle-deep. "This is what I feared," he said. "What say you, Aragorn?" "I feared it too," Aragorn answered, "though less than some other things. Snow may fall, though rarely this deep in the south, except on high peaks, but we are still far below them, and these paths are open all winter." "I wonder if this is the enemy's doing," said Boromir. "In my country, they say he can control storms in the mountains of shadow above Mordor. He has strange powers and many allies." "His arm must be long indeed," said Gimli. "If he can send snow from the north to trouble us here, 300 miles away?" "His arm is growing long," said Gandalf. While they paused, the wind dropped and the snow eased, then ceased. They went on again, but had not gone far when the storm returned with redoubled fury. The wind howled, and the snow became a heavy, blinding blizzard. Boromir soon found it impossible to go on. The hobbits, bent double, struggled behind the taller men, but clearly they could not go much farther. Frodo's feet felt like lead. Pippin stumbled after him. Even Gimli, sturdy as any dwarf, began to grumble. The company halted together as if by unspoken agreement. Strange sounds echoed from the darkness around them. Perhaps the wind caught in cracks and gullies, yet it wailed like voices of grief and mad laughter. Stones began to fall from the cliffs, whistling overhead or crashing on the path behind. Now and then came a heavy thud, as of a great rock rolling down. "We can go no further tonight," said Boromir. "Call it wind if you will. These are its voices, wickedness, and the stones are aimed at us." "I call it wind," said Aragorn. "But that does not make you wrong. There are many strange, unfriendly things in the world that hate the walking folk. Though they serve no Dark Lord, some are older than he. Caradhras was called cruel long before the Dark Lord came," said Gimli. "Whoever the enemy be, it matters not if we cannot withstand their assault," said Gandalf. "But what can we do?" said Pippin miserably. He was leaning on Merry and Frodo, and he was shivering. "Either stop here or go back," said Gandalf. "There's no use going on. If I remember rightly, a little higher up this path comes out on a narrow, shallow depression beneath a long cliff face. There we should have no shelter from snow or stones or anything else." "And turning back would promise no good while the storm is raging," said Aragorn. "We could not reach any place on this path with better shelter than the cliff we are under now." "Shelter!" muttered Sam. "If this can be called shelter, then a wall without a roof would make a fine house." Now the company huddled together close to the cliff. It faced south, and near the base it leaned out a little. They hoped it would give them some protection from the north wind and the falling stones. But the swirling winds came round them from every side, and snow poured down from the thick clouds that gathered without ceasing. They crouched together, backs to the wall. Bill, the pony, stood patiently before the hobbits, drooping but shielding them a little. Yet snow fell thickly on his hocks and rose higher. Without the taller companions, the hobbits would soon have been buried. A deadly drowsiness came over Frodo. He felt himself sinking swiftly into a warm and hazy dream. He thought of a fire glowing on his toes, and he heard Bilbo's voice speaking out of the shadows beyond the hearth. "Don't bother too much about the diary, my lad. You needn't come back to tell me about snowstorms on the 12th of January. But I want to sleep, Uncle Bilbo," Frodo tried to answer, as he felt himself slipping away, and he struggled to stay awake. Boromir was lifting him up out of the snow which had already buried him to the neck. "This will be death, Gandalf," said Boromir. "Sitting here until snow buries us is useless. We must do something to save ourselves." "Give them this," said Gandalf, rummaging in his pack and drawing out a leather flask. "Each of us a sip, every one of us. It is very precious. It is Miruvor, the cordial of Imladris. The elves gave it to me when we set out. Pass it round." No sooner had Frodo swallowed a sip of the warm, fragrant liquor than he felt new strength of heart, and the heavy lethargy left his limbs. The others revived also, and felt hope and vigour rekindle. But still the snow did not lessen. It whirled around them thicker than ever, and the wind blew harder. "What if we make a fire now?" said Boromir suddenly.
"It seems now we must choose between fire and death, Gandalf."
"Surely we are hidden from unfriendly eyes when snow is covering us, but that will not help us much." "Kindle it if you can," said Gandalf. "If any watchers can endure this storm, they will see us."
Fire or no fire, but though they had brought wood and kindling at Boromir's advice,
neither elvish nor dwarvish skill could keep a flame alight in the swirling wind or kindle it upon the wet fuel. At last Gandalf reluctantly gave them a hand. He took a bundle of twigs and held it for a moment. Then with a command he cried, "Nawr an edraith amen." He thrust the end of his staff into the midst of them.
Instantly a great flash of blue and green flames sprang out, and the wood flared and crackled. "If there are any to see, then at least I have shown myself," he said.
"The signs of Gandalf are upon this place, and all from Rivendell to the gates of Anduin will know it." But the company cared no longer for watchers or unfriendly eyes. Their hearts were glad as they saw the red flame. The wood spluttered, and though the snow hissed around it and a pool of slush spread under their feet, they rejoiced and warmed their hands. They stood there, a circle of glowing faces about the fire, as if dancing and fanning it. Red light shone on their weary and anxious faces, and the night behind seemed like a solid wall. But the fire burned quickly, and the snow did not cease. The fire sank, and the last faggot was thrown on. "Night is passing," said Aragorn. "Morning is not far off." "If any morning can pierce these clouds," said Gimli. Boromir stepped out of the circle and peered into the blackness. Frodo, weary, gazed at the flickering embers glowing white for a while in the dying fire. Then he saw them no longer. Suddenly sleep came over him again, but now he realized that the wind was falling and the flakes were bigger and lazier. A pale light grew slowly.
At last the snow ceased. As light strengthened, it revealed a silent, deadly world.
Beneath them lay white mounds, domes, and shapeless hollows, fading into the slopes below, their depth lost in the vast, brooding clouds that threatened to snow again. Gimli looked up and shook his head. "Caradhras has not forgiven us," he said. "It will go on throwing snow at us if we go on. We must turn back as soon as may be." All agreed, but retreat was difficult. Only a few yards from the dead fire the snow lay several feet deep, higher than the hobbits' heads. The wind had scooped and heaped it into a great drift against the cliff. If Gandalf would go before us with a bright flame, he might melt a path for us, said Legolas. The storm had troubled him little, and he alone of the company was still fresh and clear. If elves could fly over mountains, they might fetch the sun to save us, said Gandalf. But I must have something to burn. I cannot burn snow. Well, said Boromir, if heads fail, strong arms must serve, as the saying is in my country. The strongest of us must make a way. Look, though all is buried, we climbed toward the cliff far ahead. That is where the snow first began to press us down. If we can reach that point, things may be easier. It is not more than 200 yards, I guess, and let us go on together, you and I, said Aragorn. Aragorn was the tallest of the company, but Boromir, only a little shorter, was broader and heavier. He went first, Aragorn behind. They toiled on and soon were weary. In places the snow rose to their chests, and Boromir was forced to plough or dig with his mighty arms rather than walk. Legolas watched them with a smile, then turned to the others. The strongest must make the way.
But I say this, let the ploughman plough, but choose an otter to swim.
And for running lightly on grass, leaves,
and snow choose an elf. So saying, he stepped lightly forward.
And Frodo noticed for the first time, though he had long known it, that the elf wore no boots.
Only light shoes as usual, and his feet made little imprint upon the snow. Farewell,
he said to Gandalf.
I go to find the sun.
And with that he ran off as lightly as if treading firm sand, and soon he passed the toiling men, waved to them, and vanished round the rocky turn. The others sat together watching until Boromir and Aragorn dwindled into black specks upon the white. At last they vanished. Time passed. The clouds thickened, and a few flakes began to fall again. An hour went by, though it seemed much longer, and at last Legolas returned. At the same time, Boromir and Aragorn appeared far behind him, labouring up the slope. "Ah!" cried Legolas as he ran up.
I have not brought the sun back.
It shines on the green fields of the south, and a little ring of snow on Redhorn will not trouble it much. But I bring hope for the weary who must walk. There is a drift made by the greatest wind. Our strong men were nearly buried in it. They despaired, until I went and told them the drift was narrow as a wall. Beyond it the snow suddenly lessens, and farther on it lies no deeper than a hobbit's toes. Just as I said, grumbled Gimli. That is no ordinary storm. It is Caradras's doing. He does not love elves or dwarves, and he has sent this wind to hinder us. But happily for you, your Caradras forgot the men with you, said Boromir, who had come up again. And stout-hearted men at that, if I may say so, though lighter feet and nimbler hands might serve you better. We have cut our way through the drift, and all here who cannot run like elves may be thankful. But how shall we get down, even if you have broken through? Said Pippin, speaking for all the hobbits. Have hope, said Boromir. I am weary, yet I have strength left, and Aragorn as well. We will bear the small ones. The others can surely trudge after us.
Come, Master Peregrine. I'll start with you. He lifted the hobbit. Cling to my back.
I shall need my arms, he said, and strode forward. Aragorn followed with Merry. Pippin marvelled at Boromir's strength, watching the path he had opened with nothing but his great arms. Even now, wading through the snow, he made a channel for the rest to follow. The snow parted as he went.
At last they reached the drift.
It lay across the path like a sudden wall, sharp-edged as if cut by knives, twice Boromir's height behind him. But a path had been hewn through, winding up and down like a bridge. Merry and Pippin were set down on the far side, and they, with Legolas, sat and waited while the company came. After a while Boromir returned to carry Sam. Behind came Gandalf, leading Bill with Gimli perched among the packs. Last came Aragorn, bearing Frodo. They passed the drift, but Frodo could scarcely feel the ground, for stones were rumbling and sliding down the slope beneath the snow. The slithering made it hard to see the others as they rounded the cliff, and when sight cleared again, they saw that the way behind was blocked.
Enough, enough,
cried Gimli. We must be gone at once. And indeed it seemed that this was the last stroke of Caradras's malice, as if the mountain were satisfied that the intruders were beaten and would return no more. The threat of snow was gone. Clouds broke, and light spread again. As Legolas had said, the snow grew ever shallower as they went down, until even the hobbits could walk. Soon they stood on a wide shelf at the top of a steep slope, where they had first felt the snow the night before. Now it was broad daylight. They looked westward from on high. Far below the tumbled lands lay the valley where they had begun the climb. Frodo's feet ached. He was chilled to the bone and famished. His head swam as he thought of the long, weary journey down. Black specks flickered before his eyes. He rubbed them, but the specks remained. Far below, yet still high above the lower slopes, the dark shapes wheeled in the air.
More birds again,
said Aragorn, pointing. There is nothing we can do now, said Gandalf. Whether they are good or evil, or of no concern to us, we must go down at once. We shall not spend another night on the Redhorn. A cold wind blew down behind them as they turned their backs on the Redhorn gate and began their weary descent. Caradras had defeated them. Chapter 16. The journey in the dark, when they stopped to rest that night, Dusk had already fallen, and the light was fading fast. They were very weary. The mountains were wrapped in a deep shadow, and a bitter wind was blowing. Gandalf had set aside for each of them a portion of the waybread from Rivendell. When they had eaten a little, he called for a council. "Of course we cannot go on tonight," he said. "The attack on the Redhorn Gate has worn us out, and we must rest here for a while." "And where shall we go next?"
asked Frodo. "Our journey and our goal still lie before us," answered Gandalf.
"We have no choice but to go on or to return to Rivendell." Pippin's face brightened visibly at the mention of returning to Rivendell. Merry and Sam looked up hopefully, but Aragorn and Boromir showed no sign of joy. Frodo looked troubled. "I wish I could return," he said. "But how could I do so with any honor, unless indeed there is no other way, and we have been utterly defeated?" "You speak truly, Frodo," said Gandalf. "To return would be to admit defeat, and to face even worse failures that would follow. If we go back now, the ring must remain there. We would never set out again. Soon or late, Rivendell would be besieged, and after a short and bitter time, it would be destroyed. The ring wraiths are terrible foes, but they are only shadows. They would grow strong and dreadful again if the One Ring returned to their master's hand." "Then we must go on if we can," said Frodo with a sigh. Sam sank into gloom. "There is one way we might try," said Gandalf. "I have thought of it from the beginning, ever since I first pondered this journey, and we should now attempt it. But it is not an easy way, and I did not speak of it to the council before. Aragorn opposed it, until at least we had tried the pass over the mountains. If there is a way worse than the Redhorn Gate—"
"Then it must be a path of evil," said Merry. "But tell us of it."
"So that we may know the worst. The road I speak of leads to the mines of Moria," said Gandalf. Only Gimli looked up, and a smouldering light kindled in his eyes. All the others trembled at the name. Even to the hobbits it was a name of vague and fearful legend. "This road may lead to Moria, but how do we know it will go through Moria?" said Aragorn gloomily. "That is an ill-omened name," said Boromir. "I do not see why we should go there. If we cannot cross the mountains, let us go south until we come to the Gap of Rohan, where the men are friendly to my people. We can take the road I followed hither. Or else we might pass the River Isen and go through Langstrand and Lebanon, and so come to Gondor by the coastal lands." "Things have changed since you came north, Boromir," answered Gandalf. "Did you not hear what I told you of Saruman?"
"I have my own business to settle with him before all is done. But the ring must not come near Isengard if that can in any way be prevented."
"The Gap of Rohan is closed to us while we bear the ring-bearer. Nor have we time for the longer road. It would take us a year to go that way, and we should pass through many barren lands with no shelter. Such places are surely not safe. The watchful eyes of both Saruman and the enemy are upon them. When you came north, Boromir, you fell under the eye of the enemy. Then you were only a lost wanderer, and he paid little heed. His mind was busy with the pursuit of the ring. But now,
as you go south again as one of the company of the ring, you will be in peril.
The danger will grow with every mile we go southward beneath the open sky. I fear that our journey becomes more desperate the more we seek to climb over the mountains. I see little hope unless we can vanish from sight for a while and leave no track. Therefore, I advise that we neither climb over the mountains nor go round them, but go under them. It is a road the enemy will least expect us to take." "We do not know what he may expect," said Boromir. "He may watch all the ways. It may be right or it may be wrong. In that case, to go into Moria would be to walk straight into a trap, and it would be no better than knocking at the gates of the Dark Tower itself. Moria is a black name. When you compare Moria with the stronghold of Sauron, you speak of what you do not know," said Gandalf. "I alone of you have ever been in the dungeons of the Dark Lord, and only in his older and lesser stronghold at Dol Guldur. Those who pass the gates of Barad-dûr do not return. But I would not lead you into Moria if I had no hope of coming out again. If there are orcs there, that would indeed be evil for us. Yet most of the orcs of the Misty Mountains were scattered or destroyed in the Battle of 5 Armies. The Great Eagles have reported that the orcs have gathered again far off, but there is still hope that Moria is free. There is even a chance that some dwarves still dwell there, and that we may yet find Balin, son of Fundin, in some deep chamber of his kin. But to find out, we must take the road. "I will take the road with you, Gandalf," said Gimli. "I will go and see the halls of Durin, whatever may wait there, if you can find the doors that were shut." "Well said, Gimli," said Gandalf. "You strengthen my heart. We will seek the hidden doors together, and we shall come through. Among the ruins of dwarves, a dwarf's head will be less likely to go astray than elves or men or hobbits. But this is not the first time I have been to Moria. I was there long ago, seeking Thrain, son of Thror, when he went missing.
I passed through and I came out alive."
"I, too, once passed through the Dimril Gate," said Aragorn quietly. "And though I also came out alive, the memory of it is still very dark."
"I would not enter Moria a second time." "Nor I, even once," said Pippin. "Nor I," muttered Sam. "Of course not,"
said Gandalf. "Who would? But the question is, who will follow me if I lead you there?" "I will go," said Gimli eagerly. "I will go," said Aragorn heavily. "You followed my lead nearly to disaster in the snow and said no word of blame. Now I will follow yours, if this last warning does not move you. I do not speak for the ring nor for anyone else among us, but for you, Gandalf. And I say to you, if you pass the doors of Moria, beware." "I will not go," said Boromir, "unless the whole company decides against me."
"What say Legolas and the little ones?"
Surely the voice of the ring-bearer should be heard. "I do not wish to go to Moria," said Legolas. The hobbit said nothing. Sam looked at Frodo. At last Frodo spoke. "I do not wish to go," he said, "but neither do I wish to refuse the advice of Gandalf. I beg that no decision be made until we have slept on it. Gandalf's vote will seem fairer in the light of day than in this cold, dark place." "The wind howls so terribly." They all sat in silent thought after these words. They could hear the wind shrieking among the rocks and trees, wailing around them in the emptiness of the black night. Suddenly Aragorn leapt up.
"How the wind howls!" he cried. "That is no ordinary wind."
"It is the howling of wolves. The wargs are coming from the west of the mountains." "Then need we wait for the morning?" said Gandalf.
"As I said, the hunt is up."
"Even if we live to see dawn, who would go southward with the wild wolves following on our trail?"
"How far is it to Moria?"
asked Boromir. "It lies to the southwest of Caradhras, about 15 miles as the crow flies, and about 20 as the wolf runs," answered Gandalf grimly. "Then let us set out as soon as we can tomorrow," said Boromir. "Wolves are worse than the dreadful orcs." "True enough," said Aragorn, drawing his sword softly. "But where the wargs howl, there also the orcs cry." "I think we should have heeded Elrond's counsel," Pippin whispered to Sam. "I don't like all this at all. I haven't enough of Bulrora Took's blood in me. The howling of wolves freezes my heart."
"I don't think I've ever felt so wretched." "My heart's down in my toes already, Mr. Pippin," said Sam. "But we haven't been eaten yet, and we've still got some good strong folk with us."
"Whatever Gandalf's got inside his head, I'll wager it isn't a wolf's stomach." To guard themselves through the night, the company climbed to the top of a small hill under whose shelter they had been lying. Its summit was crowned with knotted old trees and surrounded by a ring of stones. They built a fire in the midst, for in the deep silence of the night there was no hope of hiding their trail from the hunters. They sat around the blaze, and those not on watch began to nod. Poor Bill, the pony, trembled and sweated where he stood. The howls of the wolves came closer and closer, sometimes near, sometimes far. In the dead of the night, many shining eyes looked up the hill. Some were already on the ring of stones. and suddenly a huge black shape of a great wolf stood there, gazing at them. It lifted its head and howled long and tremblingly, as though calling its pack to the attack. Gandalf stood up and stepped forward, raising his staff.
"Listen to me, Hound of Sauron,"
He cried. "Gandalf is here."
"Fly if you value your foul skin. I will shrivel you from tail to snout if you enter this ring of stones."
The wolf growled and leapt toward them. At that instant there was a sharp twang.
Legolas had released his bow.
A terrible cry rang out, and the shadow that was springing forward fell with a thud to the ground. The elf's arrow had pierced its throat. The watching eyes vanished suddenly. Gandalf and Aragorn came forward, but the hilltop was silent. The pack had disappeared. Before them lay only the still night, and no more howls came through the sighing wind. The night was far spent, and the moon was glimmering westward through shifting clouds. Suddenly Frodo fell asleep. Then all at once a dreadful chorus of howls burst out wildly around the camp. A great host of wargs had silently gathered, and were now attacking from every side at once. "Feed the fire with everything you can," cried Gandalf to the hobbits. "Draw your blades and stand back to back." In the flickering light of drawn swords, Frodo saw many grey shapes springing up over the ring of stones.
Others followed close behind. Aragorn thrust his sword deep into the throat of a huge leading wolf.
With a mighty stroke, Boromir hewed the head from another. Beside them Gimli stood firm, his sturdy legs planted wide, gripping his dwarf axe tightly. The bow of Legolas sang swiftly. In the leaping firelight, Gandalf seemed suddenly to grow tall and menacing. He rose up, towering like an ancient stone king crowned upon a hill. Stooping like a cloud, he seized a blazing branch and strode forward to meet the wolves. They shrank from before him. He flung the burning brand high into the air. It flared with a sudden white radiance like lightning, and his voice rolled out like thunder.
"Nawar an Edraith Ammon, Naudan Ingaurhoth,"
he cried. There came a roar and a crack, and the tree above him burst into leaf and blazed with flame. Fire leapt from treetop to treetop. The whole hill was now crowned with a dazzling light. The swords and knives of the defenders gleamed like bright stars. The last arrow of Legolas flew, whistling through the air, and smote the heart of the great chieftain wolf, burning as it struck. All the others fled. The fire slowly sank, till nothing remained but ash and embers. A great smoke rose above the smouldering trees and drifted away from the hill as the first pale light of dawn spread in the sky. Their enemies had withdrawn and did not return. "I told you so, Mr. Pippin," said Sam, clutching his sword. "Wolves won't get him. He's a wise one and never makes a mistake. My hair's near singed off, though." When morning came, there was no trace of the wolves, and they looked with scorn upon the carcasses lying about. Nothing remained of the battle save charred trees and Legolas's arrows upon the hilltop. All of them were unhurt, save for one whose shaft had burned away, leaving only the head. "That is what I feared," said Gandalf. "These were no ordinary wolves hunting for food in the wild. Let us eat quickly and be gone." That day the weather changed again, almost as if some power had commanded that snow should cease. For when they had turned off the road, another power seemed now to will that clear light should fall upon the wilderness, making all that moved there visible from afar. The wind shifted from north to northwest during the night, and now it had died away. The clouds were vanishing southward, and the sky was radiant, high and blue. As they stood on the hillside ready to set out, a pale gleam of sunlight touched the mountain tops. "We must reach the doors before sunset," said Gandalf, "or I fear we shall never reach them. It is not far, but the way may be rough, for Aragorn can no longer guide us. He has seldom been in these lands, and I myself have only once been under the western walls of Moria."
"Long ago. Oh, there it lies," he said, pointing southeast.
"Where the mountains plunge steeply into shadow at their feet." Far away they could dimly see bare cliffs, and among them, higher than all, a huge grey wall. When we left the road, I led you southward, not back to our starting point, as some of you may have noticed. That is well for now. We have saved many miles and time presses.
Let us go.
I hardly know what to hope for, said Boromir gloomily, that Gandalf will find what he seeks, or that when we come to the cliff we shall be shut out forever from the gates. All choices seem ill, and to be trapped between wolves and a wall may be our lot. Come on. Gimli now walked beside the wizard, eager for Moria. Together they led the company back toward the range. Only one ancient road led to Moria from the west, following a stream called Ciranon that flowed out beneath a cliff near the doors. But either Gandalf had lost his bearings, or the land had changed in recent years, for he did not find the stream where he sought it a few miles south of their starting point. By noon, the company was still wandering through a barren, stony country of red rock. No sound or sight of water could be found. All was lifeless and dry. Their hearts sank. They saw no living thing, and no bird moved in the sky. But what the coming night might bring, if it overtook them lost in that waste, none liked to think. Suddenly Gimli, striding ahead, called them back. He was standing on a rock, pointing to the right. They hurried to him and saw below a shallow channel. It was almost dry and silent, with only a thin trickle of water running among red and brown stones. But beside it ran a ruined path, winding among broken walls and paving stones of an ancient road. "Ah,
Here it is at last,"
said Gandalf. Here the stream ran, the gate stream they used to call it, Ciranon. But I cannot guess what has happened to it. It used to roar and foam.
"Come, we must hurry."
We are late. The company were footsore and weary, but they toiled along the rough, broken track for many miles more. The sun had passed its height and was sinking westward. After a brief halt and a hasty meal, they went on again. Before them rose the grim mountains, but the road lay deep in a hollow, and they could only see the higher cliffs and peaks to the east. At last they came to a sudden turn. The road doubled back southward between the channel and a sheer wall of rock on the left, then bent again eastward. They saw before them, around the corner, a stony fall about 5 fathoms high, jagged and sharp-edged. Water dripped from above through a wide crack, as though a great waterfall had once poured there. "All things have changed indeed," said Gandalf. "But this is the place beyond doubt. These are the remains of the stair falls. If I remember right, there was a flight of steps cut into the rock face, but the main road wound round and round to the top. There was once a shallow valley behind the falls, right at the wall of Moria, and the Ciranon flowed through it beside the road. Let us see what things are like now." They found the stone steps without difficulty, and Gimli climbed up swiftly, followed by Gandalf and Frodo. When they reached the top, they found they could go no further that way, and the reason for the dry gate stream was plain. Behind them the sun was sinking, pouring a cold golden light into the western sky. Before them stretched a dark, still lake. No gleam of sky or sunset was reflected on its sullen surface. The Ciranon had been dammed and filled the valley. Beyond the shadowed water rose vast cliffs, their sheer faces pale and hard in the fading light. They were the end and the impassable barrier. Frodo saw no sign of gate or entrance, no crack or crevice in the forbidding wall. "There are the walls of Moria," said Gandalf, pointing across the water. And there the gate once stood, the elven door at the end of the road from Hollin. But that road is blocked now. I suppose none of the company wished to swim this dark, foul lake at nightfall.
"It looks evil. We must find a way round the northern edge," said Gimli. "The first thing for the company to do is to climb by the main path and see where it leads us."
Even without this lake, we could not have brought our pack pony up this way. "But in any case, we cannot take the poor beast into the mines," said Gandalf. "The road under the mountains is dark, narrow and steep. We cannot manage it even if we could." poor old Bill,
said Frodo. I never thought of that.
nor poor Sam.
What will he say?
I am sorry, said Gandalf. Poor Bill has been a useful companion, and parting with him grieves my heart. We should have travelled lighter and left behind no creature that Sam loved, if I could have my way. Yet I fear we shall have cause to be grateful for taking this road. Day was fading, and the cold stars were already gleaming high above the sunset, when the company, as swiftly as they could, climbed the rocks and reached the lake's shore. Its width seemed no more than 2 or 3 furlongs at the broadest point. They could not see how far it stretched southward, but at the northern end, not half a mile away, between the enclosing hills and the water's edge, was a narrow strip of land. They made haste, for there were still some miles to go before they reached the spot Gandalf had marked, and they had yet to find the door. When they came to the northernmost corner of the lake, they found a narrow stream blocking their way. It was green and stagnant, running out like a long, skinny arm toward the enclosing hills. Gimli, undaunted, went straight in and found the water shallow, not above his ankles at the edge. They followed him carefully, feeling their way, for beneath the weeds and scum the stones were smooth and slippery, and the footing treacherous. Frodo shuddered with disgust as he stepped into the dark, murky water. When Sam, the last of the company, led Bill up onto the dry land on the far shore, a soft sound came to their ears. A plop, followed by a splash, as if a fish had disturbed the still surface of the water. They turned quickly and saw rippling black shadows spreading under the fading light, wide circles moving outward from a point far out in the lake. There was a bubbling noise and then silence. The darkness grew deeper, and the last glimmer of sunset was swallowed up in a shadow of cloud. At that moment Gandalf was striding forward with great vigour, and the others followed as best they could. They came to a stretch of dry land between the lake and the cliffs beyond. It was narrow, seldom more than 12 yards across, and strewn with fallen rocks. But they found a path hugging the cliff and tried to keep away from the dark water as much as possible. About a mile southward they came into a region of holly trees. Dead stumps and decaying roots stood in shallow water, remnants that looked like ancient shrubs, or like the remains of a hedge that had once bordered the road cutting across the wet valley. But near the base of the cliff 2 great trees rose up, alive and strong, larger than any holly that Frodo had ever seen or imagined. Their vast roots clutched at the wall and reached out over the water. Beneath the shadow of the cliffs they looked, from a distance, like bushes when viewed from the top of the stair. But now they stood tall and silent, dark and rigid, like sentinels at the end of the road. "At last we are here," said Gandalf. "This is the elven road from Hollins End. Holly was their token in this land, and they planted it to mark the boundaries of their realm. For the west gate was chiefly used by the lords of Moria in their dealings with the elves. Those were happier days, when there was still friendship at times, between folk of different kindreds, even between dwarves and
elves. It was not the dwarves' fault that friendship waned, said Gimli. I have not heard that it was the fault of the elves, said Legolas.
I have heard both, said Gandalf. But now I will not judge between them. I beg you both, Legolas and Gimli, to be friends and to aid me. I shall need both of you. The doors are shut and hidden, and we must find them as soon as we may.
Night is at hand.
He turned to the others. While I search, each of you prepare to enter the mines. Here, I fear, we must bid farewell to our faithful beast of burden. You must leave behind much of what we brought against the weather. Within, you will not need it, or so I hope, when we come through and go south. Instead, each must take a share of what the pony carried, especially food and water skins. But you can't leave poor old Bill here in such a forsaken place, Mr. Gandalf, cried Sam angrily and sorrowfully. I won't have it, and that's flat.
After he's come all this way.
I am sorry, Sam, said the wizard. But when the doors open, I do not think you will be able to lead Bill inside.
Into the dark of Moria, you must choose between Bill and your master. He'd follow Mr. Frodo into a dragon's den if I led him, Sam protested.
It'll be quicker to kill him if we leave him to wolves. I hope that would be a quicker death, said Gandalf. He laid his hand on the pony's head and spoke softly. Go with words of guarding and guidance, he said. You are a wise beast and have learned much in Rivendell. Find your way where you can find grass, and then go back to Elrond's house, or wherever you wish to go. So Sam, he will have as fair a chance of escaping the wolves and getting home as we do. Sam stood silent by the pony and could not answer. Bill seemed to understand what was happening. He nuzzled Sam, putting his nose to his ear. Sam burst into tears, fumbling with the harness, throwing down every pack the pony bore. The others sorted the goods, piling what might be left, and dividing what they must carry. When all was ready, they turned to Gandalf. He seemed to have done nothing. He stood between the two trees, staring at the bare wall of rock as if to bore a hole through it with his eyes. Gimli busied himself beside him, tapping here and there with his axe. Legolas stood opposite the cliff as if listening. Well, here we are and all ready, said Merry. But where are the doors?
I can't see any sign of them. Dwarf doors are not made to be seen when shut, said Gimli. They are invisible.
And their own masters cannot find them or open them if their secrets are forgotten. But this door was not made to be a secret known only to dwarves, said Gandalf, suddenly rousing himself and turning. Unless things have changed, eyes that know how to look should be able to discover the signs. He stepped forward to the rock face. In the dim light between the trees was a smooth space, and he felt it with his hand, murmuring words. Then he stepped back. Look, he said. Do you see anything now? The moon now shone upon the grey stone. For a while they could see nothing. Then slowly, on the surface where the wizard's hand had passed, faint lines appeared, like slender threads of silver shining in the moonlight. At first, they were no more than pale gossamer traces, visible only where the moon struck them, but they grew and brightened until their design could be discerned. At the top, high above Gandalf's reach, was an arch of elvish letters. Beneath, through fading and broken lines, appeared a hammer and anvil surmounted by a crown with 7 stars. Below them were 2 trees, each bearing crescent moons. Most clearly of all, in the middle of the door, was a single star with many rays. The emblems of Durin, cried Gimli. And the tree of the high elves, said Legolas. And the star of the house of Feanor, said Gandalf. They are made of Itildin, which mirrors only starlight and moonlight, and sleeps until it is touched by one who speaks the words now forgotten in Middle-earth. Long have I pondered them before I could recall them to mind. What do the words say?
Asked Frodo, who was trying to make them out.
I thought I knew the letters of the elves, but I cannot read these. The words are in the elven tongue of the west of Middle-earth in the elder days, said Gandalf. But they do not say anything important to us. They read, The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria. Speak, friend, and enter. And in smaller letters below, I, Narvi, made them. Celebrimbor of Holland drew these signs. What does it mean, speak, friend, and enter? Asked Merry. That is plain enough, said Gimli. If you are a friend, speak the password, and the doors will open, and you can enter. Yes, said Gandalf. These doors are governed by words. Some doors of the dwarves will open at special times, or for special persons. Others are locked and need keys when their times and words are known. These doors have no key. In Durin's day, they were not secret. They usually stood open here and at the eastern gate. But they were shut, and any who knew the word could read the inscription and pass in. That, at least, is what the records say. Is it not so, Gimli?
It is, said the dwarf.
But the words are forgotten.
Narvi and his craft and kin have vanished from the earth. But you surely know the word, Gandalf, said Boromir in surprise. No, said the wizard.
They stared at him in astonishment. Only Aragorn, who knew Gandalf well, remained silent. and unmoved. "Then what was the use of bringing us to this accursed spot?" cried Boromir, glancing back at the dark water with a shudder. "You said you'd passed through the mines once before."
How did you do that if you did not know how to get in?
"To your first question, Boromir," said the wizard, "I can answer that I do not yet know the word, but we shall soon see. And," he added, his eyes glinting beneath his brows, "you may ask what use my work is when it has proved in vain. As for your other question, do you doubt my tale? Or have you no wits?"
I did not come in by this way. I came from the east.
"If you wish to know, I tell you that these doors open outwards. From inside you may thrust them open with your hands. From outside nothing can move them save the spell of command. They cannot be pushed inwards." "Then what will you do?" asked Pippin, unabashed by the wizard's bristling brows. "Knock your head against these doors, Peregrine Took," said Gandalf. "And if that does not shatter them, perhaps it will give me a moment's peace from foolish questions. I shall try to find the opening spell. I once knew every spell in all tongues of elves, men, or orcs used for such a purpose.
I can still remember them perfectly without searching my mind.
But I think a few tries will serve."
And I shall not need to call upon Gimli for secret words of the dwarves that they teach to none.
"The opening word will be Elvish, like the writing above the arch, that is certain." He stood before the rock again, and gently touched the silver star beneath the anvil's sign with his staff.
Anan Helen, Edro hi amen, Fennas Nuguthrim last bet lamen,
he commanded. The silver lines faded, but the grey stone remained still. He repeated the words in various orders and with changes of tone. Then he tried other spells, one after another, now speaking faster and louder, now softly and slowly. He spoke many single words of Elvish. Nothing happened. The cliff towered silent under the cold stars, the wind blew chill, and the doors stood fast shut. Once more Gandalf approached the wall, raised his hand, and cried in wrath, "Edro! Edro!" He struck the stone with his staff.
"Open, open!"
he shouted, and repeated the command in every language ever spoken in the west of Middle-earth. Then he threw down his staff and sat down in silence. At that moment, far away, the wind bore to their ears the howling of wolves. Bill the pony trembled in fear, and Sam ran to him, whispering gently in his ear. "Do not let him run away," said Boromir. "We may still need him, unless the wolves find us."
"I hate this foul pool."
He sprang up, picked up a large stone, and threw it far out into the dark water. It vanished with a soft slap. But at once there came a hollow rumbling and bubbling sound. Great ripples spread across the surface from the point where the stone had fallen and moved slowly towards the cliff's foot. "Why did you do that, Boromir?" cried Frodo. "I hate this place too, and I am afraid. I don't know what of, not of wolves nor of the dark behind the doors, but of something else. I am afraid of that pool."
"Don't disturb it. I wish we could get away,"
said Merry. "Why doesn't Gandalf do something quickly?" said Pippin. Gandalf took no notice. He sat with his head bowed, neither despairing nor angry. The howling of wolves came again, and the sound of water grew nearer. There was a noise of bubbling and splashing at the lake's edge. Suddenly the wizard sprang to his feet, startling them all. He laughed aloud.
"I have it," he cried. Of course.
Absurdly simple, like most riddles when you see the answer. He picked up his staff and stood before the cliff, then spoke clearly. "Melon!" A star glimmered briefly and then vanished. Then the outline of a great door slowly appeared, though there had been no crack or joint visible before. It divided silently from the middle, opening little by little until the two doors lay wide against the wall. Through the widening gap, a dark stairway could be seen rising steeply, but the darkness beyond the lower steps was deeper than night. The company stood astonished. "I was completely wrong," said Gandalf, "and so was Gimli. Merry alone of all of us guessed right." The password was written plainly above the arch. It was already translated, "Speak, friend, and enter." I only had to say the word "friend" in Elvish, and the doors opened. So simple, Too simple for a learned master of old tales in these suspicious days. Those were happier times.
Now let us go.
He stepped forward and set foot upon the lowest steps. But at that very moment many things happened. Frodo felt something seize him by the ankle. He fell and cried out. The pony Bill neighed in terror, lashed out, and galloped away along the lake shore into the darkness. Sam ran after him, but hearing Frodo's cry, he turned back, weeping and cursing. The others rushed around and saw that the water in the pool was heaving and bubbling as if a host of snakes were coiling upward from the southern end. A long, sinuous tentacle came out of the water. It was pale green, luminous and wet.
Its end groped about, seized Frodo's leg, and was dragging him back into the water.
Sam dropped to his knees and hacked at it with his knife. The arm released Frodo, and Sam pulled him away, shouting for help. 20 other arms were writhing out. The dark water boiled, and a foul stench rose from it. Into the gateway.
Up the stairs, quick!
Shouted Gandalf, leaping back. He roused them from the horror that seemed to root them to the spot, all except Sam, and drove them on. They were just in time. Sam and Frodo had barely scrambled up the first steps, and Gandalf was turning to follow, when the long arms groped over the narrow shore and felt along the cliff face and the doors. One luminous tentacle slipped through the doorway. Gandalf turned and paused. If he thought of a spell to close the doors from within, it was needless.
Many coiling arms grasped the doors from either side, and with a horrible strength they slammed them shut.
All light vanished. A rumbling crash and a sound of splintering stone echoed faintly through the heavy rock. Sam, clinging to Frodo's hand, sank down on the steps in the pitch darkness.
Poor old Bill,
he sobbed. Poor old Bill.
Wolves and snakes.
But the snakes have finished him off, I guess.
I've no choice, Mr. Frodo. I'm going with you.
They heard Gandalf go down the steps and thump the doors with his staff. The stone quivered and the stairs shook, but the doors did not open. Well, well, said the wizard. Now the way is shut behind us, and there is only one way out, on the other side of the mountains. From the sound of it, the slope outside is buried, the trees torn up and flung against the gate.
I'm sorry.
They were beautiful trees and had stood there long. I felt something dreadful creeping near me the moment my foot touched the water, said Frodo. What was that thing? Or were there many of them? I do not know, answered Gandalf, but the arms were guided by a single purpose. Something has crawled or been driven out of the dark water under the mountains. It is older and fouler than the orcs of the deep places of the world. He did not voice his thought of what creature might dwell beneath the lake, nor why it had seized Frodo first of all the company. Boromir muttered something under his breath, but the echoing stone made his hoarse whisper ring out so that all could hear. In the deep places of the world.
And that is the road we are taking against my wish.
Who now will lead us in this dark, dread place? I will, said Gandalf, and Gimli shall walk beside me.
Follow my staff.
As the wizard climbed the great steps, he raised his staff, and from its tip a faint light gleamed. The broad stairway was sound and unbroken. They counted 200 steps, wide and shallow, and at the top they found a passage running on into the dark, through a low archway. Let us sit and have a bite here, on the ground, since we can find no dining hall, said Frodo. He was beginning to shake off the horror of the clutching hand, and suddenly felt very hungry. This suggestion was welcomed by all, and they sat on the upper steps in the dim glow. When they had eaten, Gandalf passed around the last of the cordial of Rivendell. I fear it will not last long, he said, but I think we shall need it after the horrors at the gate. And unless we are extraordinarily lucky, we shall need what remains before we see the other side. Also be cautious of any water you find here. There are streams and wells in the mines, but do not touch them. We may have no chance to fill our bottles again until we come to the Dimril Dale. How long shall we have to go?
Asked Frodo. I cannot say, answered Gandalf.
It depends on many chances. But if all goes well and we are not delayed or lost, we must journey for 3 or 4 days, I think. From the west gate to the east gate is no less than 40 miles as the crow flies, and this road may wind much further. After a short rest, they went on again.
All were eager to go as fast as they could with a determination equal to their weariness.
Gandalf led as before. He held his shining staff in his left hand, its light just bright enough to show the ground before his feet. In his right he carried Glamdring. Behind him came Gimli, his eyes glinting in the dim light as he turned his head from side to side. Frodo followed the dwarf, his own short sword drawn, Sting. But Sting and Glamdring gave no gleam, which was well, for blades forged by the elves of old would shine coldly if any orcs were near. Behind Frodo came Sam, and after him Legolas, the younger hobbits, and Boromir. In the darkness at the rear, Aragorn walked, shadowy and silent. The path wound this way and that, and began to descend. Down, down it led for a long while before becoming level again. The air grew hot and stifling, though not foul, and sometimes they felt cooler breaths upon their faces from openings they could half guess along the walls. There were many such. In the faint radiance of the wizard's staff, Frodo caught glimpses of steps, arches, and side passages leading upward, or running down, or plunging into shadowy depths beyond sight. It was bewildering enough to make all hope of remembering the way quite vain. Gimli could be of little help to Gandalf, save through the steadfast courage of his heart. At least he did not tremble in the dim darkness as much as most of the others. The wizard often asked his counsel at certain points of doubt in choosing the way, yet in the end Gandalf always had the final word. The minds of Moria were vaster and more intricate than Gimli, son of Glóin, of the dwarves of the mountain, had imagined, though he had once been there. Gandalf's old memories of long-ago journeys availed him little, but even in the deep darkness, and despite all the branching ways, he still seemed to know whither he wished to go, and he never lost heart, so long as the road before him seemed to lead toward his goal. "Do not be afraid," said Aragorn. They halted longer than usual while Gandalf and Gimli whispered together. The others clustered behind, waiting uneasily.
"Fear not.
I have journeyed with him on many paths, though never one so dark, and in Rivendell there were many tales of his great deeds that I have not yet seen. He will not go astray if there is any path to find. He led us in here in spite of our fears. He will lead us out again, whatever price he must pay. He can find his way home in the dark better than the cats of Queen Beruthiel." The Fellowship was fortunate indeed to have such a guide. They had no means to kindle torches. Many of their things had been left outside in the desperate struggle at the door. Yet without some light they soon found themselves in peril. Not only were there many ways to choose among, but holes and pits and dark wells opened beside their path where their footsteps echoed hollowly. Cracks and crevices yawned in the walls and floors, and now and then one opened suddenly before their feet. The widest was 7 feet across, and it took Pippin a long while to summon the courage to leap the deadly gap. From the south there came a faint sound of water stirring, as of wheels turning far below. "Rope," Sam murmured. "Now I wish I'd remembered it if I've gone and forgotten it." As these perils grew more frequent, their pace became slower.
It seemed that they went on endlessly under the mountain's roots.
They grew weary and had no heart to think of halting anywhere. Frodo's spirits had risen for a while after their escape, when he had eaten a little and drunk a sip of cordial, but now they sank again, burdened with an oppressive dread. Though he had been healed of his knife wound in Rivendell, the scar of that deadly stroke was not without effect. His senses grew keener, more aware of things unseen. One strange sign of change was that he found he could see in the dark better than any of his companions, save perhaps Gandalf. And he bore the ring. It hung upon its chain against his breast, and at times it seemed to grow very heavy. He was aware of evil ahead and evil behind, yet he said nothing. He only gripped his sword hilt tighter and pressed on. The company spoke little, and only in quick whispers. No sound could be heard save their own footsteps. The heavy tramp of Gimli's boots, Boromir's firm tread, Legolas's light step, the soft patter of hobbit feet, and behind them all the long strides of Aragorn. When they halted, there was silence, save for the distant drip of unseen water. But Frodo began to hear, or to imagine that he heard, other sounds. The faint patter of soft, bare feet. It was never loud, nor near enough for certainty, yet it never ceased while the company moved. It made no echo, and when they stopped, it would patter on a little, then fall silent. When they entered Moria, it had been dusk. They had gone for many hours, halting seldom, when Gandalf made his first serious pause. Before him loomed a great dark archway opening into 3 passages, all leading eastward. But the left-hand way sloped downward, the right climbed upward, and the middle went straight on, level and narrow. "I have no memory of this place," said Gandalf, standing uncertain beneath the arch. He lifted his staff, hoping to find some mark or inscription to guide him, but there was nothing. "I am too weary to decide," he said, shaking his head. "And I judge you are as tired as I, or worse. Better to rest here for what remains of the night."
You know what I mean.
It is always dark here, but the moon outside has climbed far in the west, and midnight is past. "Poor old Bill," said Sam. "I wonder where he is."
I hope those wolves haven't got him. They found a great stone door beside the arch. It was half closed, but moved easily at a touch.
Behind it was a large chamber hewn in the rock. "Easy, easy!" cried Gandalf as Merry and Pippin sprang forward, glad to find a place where they might rest with some sense of shelter.
Easy, you do not know what may be inside.
"Let me go first." He entered cautiously and the others followed.
"There,"
he said, pointing his staff to the middle of the floor. Before his feet was a round hole like the mouth of a well. Broken and dusty chains lay beside it, trailing down into blackness. Shards of stone were scattered nearby. "One of you might fall in and never find the bottom," said Aragorn to Merry. "Let the guide go first, if you have one. This seems to be a guard-room, made to watch the 3 passages," said Gimli. The hole clearly was a well for the watchers, covered once by a stone lid. "But the lid is broken. We must tread warily in this darkness." Pippin felt curiously drawn toward the well. While the others were spreading blankets and making their beds as far as possible from the pit, he crept up and peered down. A chill air rose from the unseen depths. On a sudden impulse, he groped for a pebble and dropped it. His heart beat many times before he heard anything. Then from far below, as though it had fallen into deep water in some cavern, came a faint plunk, clear, remote, and repeated. "What's that?" cried Gandalf. His anger flared when Pippin confessed, and Pippin saw his eyes glint. "Full of a took," he growled. "This is a serious journey, not a hobbit walking party. Throw yourself in next time, and then you will cause no more trouble. Now be quiet." For several minutes they heard nothing more. Then faint tapping sounds came from the deep. Tom-tap, tap-tom. They ceased, and when the echoes died, they began again. Tap-tom, tom-tap, tap-tap, tom. They came fitfully like signals, then at last they stopped and were heard no more. "That was the sound of a hammer, or I have never heard one," said Gimli. "Yes," said Gandalf, "and I do not like it. It may have nothing to do with Peregrine's foolish stone, but sometimes disturbance is worse than silence. Pray, and do nothing of the sort again. Let us hope we may sleep undisturbed."
"You, Pippin, will take the first watch as your reward." Pippin sat miserably by the door in the dark, turning now and again, afraid that something unknown might creep up from the well.
He wished he could cover it with a blanket, but dared not move nearer, even when Gandalf seemed asleep. In truth, Gandalf was still awake, lying motionless in thought. Long he pondered, recalling every memory of his earlier journey through the mines and worrying over the road ahead. A false turn could be disastrous. After an hour, he rose and went to Pippin. "Go and sleep, my lad," he said gently. "You look ready for it."
"I cannot rest, so I may as well keep watch. I know what I need," he muttered, as he sat down by the door. "I need smoke. I haven't tasted it since morning before the snowstorm." The last thing Pippin saw before sleep claimed him was the dim outline of the old wizard sitting hunched upon the floor,
his hands clasped between his knees. For a moment the tip of his nose glowed, and a wisp of smoke curled out. Gandalf roused them later. He had sat watch for 6 hours, letting the others rest. "And while I watched, my mind cleared," he said. "I dislike the middle way, and the left-hand air smells foul, and we have no guide. I shall take the right-hand path. It is time we began to climb again." For 8 dark hours they went on, pausing only twice briefly. No danger met them, no sound or sight troubled them, save the faint glimmer of Gandalf's light before them, flickering like a will-o'-the-wisp. Their road wound steadily upward, broadening as it rose. No doors opened from it, no side passages led away. The floor was level and sound. At last they had found a main highway, and they went faster. They followed it some 15 miles eastward in line, though the turns made the distance greater. As the way mounted, Frodo's heart grew lighter. Yet still he felt oppressed, and sometimes heard, or thought he heard, those soft, following footsteps. They had gone as far as the hobbits could endure without rest, and were seeking a place to sleep when suddenly the walls on either hand fell away. They seemed to be passing under a great arch into a vast, empty space.
A warm draught came from behind.
Before them, cold air breathed upon their faces. They halted and huddled together in fear. Gandalf seemed pleased. "I have chosen rightly," he said. "At least we have come to better places, and I guess we are not far from the eastern side. But we are high above the Dimrill Gate, unless I am mistaken. The air tells me we are in a large hall."
"I will venture a little light." He raised his staff, and for a brief moment there was a blaze of radiance.
The darkness about them fled. For a heartbeat they saw a vast roof far above, upheld by mighty pillars hewn of stone. Before them, and on either side, stretched a great empty hall, its walls smooth black and gleaming like glass, reflecting and glinting faintly. 3 other archways they saw, one straight ahead to the east, and one on either hand. Then the light faded. "That is all I shall risk for now," said Gandalf. On this side of the mountain there were once great windows looking out towards light in the upper reaches of the mines. I think we have come to them. But outside it is still night, and we shall not know until morning. If I am right, we shall see daylight soon. Meanwhile, we had best rest. So far things have gone well, and the worst of the dark road is behind us. Yet we are not through, and a long way still lies before the gates that open to the world. The company spent the night in that cavernous hall, huddled in a corner against the draught that blew cold from the eastern arch. They lay wrapped in blankets beneath the vast, hollow dark, oppressed by the loneliness and immensity of those endless chambers, stairs, and passages. The wildest tales told of Moria's darkness now seemed true to the hobbits,
filling them with awe and fear. "There must have been a huge number of dwarves here once," said Sam.
"And each of them worked for 500 years to make all this, and most of it in stone. What were they doing it all for? They can't have lived in these dark holes, surely." "These are no holes," said Gimli. "This is a great realm and city of the Dwarrodelf. In the elder days it was not dark, but full of light and splendour, and that is still remembered in our songs." He rose in the shadows, and his deep voice began to chant, echoing softly through the pillars. The world was young, the mountains green, the moon was bright, unblemished, seen. The rivers clear, the stones still clean, then Durin woke and walked serene. He named the nameless hills with pride, he drank from wells with waters wide. He knelt to seek in mirrored tide, and there he saw the stars collide, a crown of jewels, pure, refined, upon a silver thread entwined. The world was fair, the mountains tall. In elder days before the fall, before the mighty kings were gone, of Nargothrond and Gondolin long, the western seas have rolled away, but fair was earth in Durin's day. Upon his throne of carven stone he sat as king beneath the dome, in pillared halls of marble bright, where gold was roof and silver light. The doors bore runes of power's flame, where sun and moon together came. The lamps of crystal, burning clear, made darkness flee and cloud disappear. Their hammer rang and anvils sang, while shining swords from metal sprang. They carved and shaped in endless might, the echoes rolled through halls of light. They delved for gems of purest fire, and wrought with craft their heart's desire. Of silver veins and golden streams they forged their shields, and armor gleamed. Their spears and axes, strong and keen, shone bright among their treasures seen. And still they labored, never tired, their hearts with song and passion fired. In Khazad-dûm the trumpets blew, the harps resounded, voices grew. But now the world is grey and old, the mountains silent, lost their gold. The forges quenched, the embers cold, the music ceased, the halls grown cold. The shadow lies on Durin's tomb, in Khazad-dûm's eternal gloom. Yet still the stars in silence peer, down into Mirror-mere. There lies his crown beneath the deep, till Durin wakes from endless sleep.
I like that song, said Sam. I think I shall learn it. About Moria, about Khazad-dûm.
But it makes the darkness seem heavier somehow, thinking of those shining lamps. Are all those heaps of jewels and gold still lying there? Gimli was silent. He said nothing after singing the song. The hoards, said Gandalf. No, the orcs have plundered Moria. Nothing is left in the upper halls. And since the dwarves fled, none have dared to seek for the treasures beneath the deep places. They have been drowned in water or in the shadow of fear. Then why do the dwarves still wish to return?
Asked Sam. For Mithril, answered Gandalf.
The wealth of Moria was not in gold or jewels, the toys of the dwarves, nor in iron, their servant. True, they found them here, but they did not need to dig for them. All that they desired they could find along the way. For here alone in the world was found Moria silver, the true silver, called Mithril in the Elvish tongue. The dwarves have a name for it which they do not speak. It was worth 10 times its weight in gold, and now its value is far greater. For little is left above the ground, and even the orcs dare not delve for it. The loads ran north toward Caradhras, and down into the shadows. The dwarves would tell no tales of this, yet though Mithril was the foundation of their wealth, it was also their ruin. They delved too greedily and too deep, and disturbed what they should not have awoken. The bane of Durin. The orcs gathered nearly all that they could bring to light, and paid it in tribute to Sauron, who desired it above all.
Mithril. Everyone covets it.
It can be beaten like copper and polished smooth as grass, and the dwarves could forge it into metal, light yet stronger than tempered steel. Its beauty is that of common silver, but the beauty of Mithril does not tarnish or grow dim. The elves loved it dearly, and among the things they made from it was Ithildin, Moonstar, as you saw upon the doors. Bilbo had a coat of rings made of mithril given to him by Thorin.
I wonder what has become of it.
Most likely it still lies gathering dust in Michel Delving Matham House, I should think. What? Cried Gimli, rousing himself from silence. A coat of Moria silver? That is a kingly gift. Yes, said Gandalf. I never told him, but it was worth more than the Shire and everything in it. Frodo said nothing, but he put his hand under his tunic and touched the rings of his mail coat. He felt stunned to think that he had been going about with something worth the value of all the Shire beneath his shirt. Did Bilbo know it, he wondered? He had no doubt that Bilbo knew it very well. Truly, it was a kingly gift, but now his thoughts strayed far from the dark mines. They flew to Rivendell, to Bilbo, and to Bag End in the days when Bilbo was still there. He wished with all his heart that he could be back there again, in those old days, cutting the grass, bustling about the flowers, and never having heard of Moria, or Mithril, or the ring. A silence fell. One by one the others fell asleep. Frodo kept watch. It seemed as if a breath were flowing out of unseen doors deep below, a breath of dread upon him. His hands were icy and his brow damp. He listened. All his mind was concentrated on listening, doing nothing else for 2 hours. But he heard nothing more, not even the imagined echo of a footstep. His watch was nearly over when far away, it seemed, in the direction of the western archway, he thought he saw 2 pale lights like eyes glimmering. He started and his head nodded. I must have been dozing on guard, he thought.
I was on the edge of a dream. He rose and rubbed his eyes,
and stood gazing into the darkness until Legolas came to take his place. When he lay down, sleep came quickly, but his dream seemed to continue. He heard whispers, and saw again 2 pale points of light drawing near. He woke and found the others talking softly beside him, while a faint light fell upon his face. Over the eastern archway there shone a pale beam, streaming down through a shaft near the roof, and across the chamber, through the northern arch, another dim light seemed to glow from far away. Frodo sat up. "Good morning," said Gandalf. "Morning has at last returned.
I was right, as you see.
We are upon the eastern side of Moria. Before this day ends, we shall come to the great gate and look upon the Mirrormere in the Dimrill Dale. I shall be glad," said Gimli. "I have looked upon Moria, and it is great, though it has become dark and dreadful, and we have found no sign of our kin. I now doubt that Balin ever came here at all." After breakfast, Gandalf decided to move on at once. "We are weary, but it is better to rest when we are outside," he said. "I fancy none of us would wish to spend another night in Moria." "Indeed not," said Boromir. "Which way shall we go? The eastern arch over there?" "Perhaps," said Gandalf. "But I do not know exactly where we are. Unless I am much mistaken, we are above the level of the great gates, and it may not be easy to find a way down to them. The western arch may lead us by a better path, but before deciding, let us have a look round. Let us go toward the light by the northern door. If we could find a window, it would be a great help, though I fear the shafts will only let the light fall deep in narrow beams." Led by Gandalf, the company passed under the northern arch. They found a wide passage. As they went along it, the light grew stronger until it shone through a doorway on their right. It was high and flat. The stone door still hung upon its hinges, half open. Beyond it was a large, square chamber. It was dimly lit, but to their eyes, long accustomed to the dark, it seemed almost bright, and they blinked as they entered. Their feet disturbed a thick layer of dust on the floor, and at first they did not notice the shapes lying scattered near the threshold. The chamber was lit by a wide shaft of sunlight falling from the eastern wall far across. High above they could see a small square of blue sky. The light fell directly upon a table in the middle of the room, a single oblong block about 2 feet high upon a larger white slab. "It looks like a tomb," whispered Frodo, and he bent forward with a curious dread to look closer. Gandalf swiftly came beside him. "Deep-cut runes stood on the slab. It is written in the runes of Daeron, such as were used in Moria of old," said Gandalf. "In the language of men and dwarves it reads, Balin son of Fundin, Lord of Moria." "Then he is dead," said Frodo. "I fear so," said Gimli, and he bowed his head.